President Trump has agreed to pause the Mexico tariffs for a month. In exchange, Mexico will reinforce their borders with 10,000 members of the National Guard to help with drug trafficking. Import taxes are still in place for Canada and China.
A developing story as we are hearing that President Trump has agreed to pause tariffs on Mexico for 1 month in exchange for Mexico placing troops along the border. Let's head back out to the post from the president via Truth Social, and I do want to bring it to you here in full, as it says this. I just spoke with President Claudia of Mexico. It was a very friendly conversation wherein she agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the border.
Like the way he's saying it, she agreed to immediately do it. As if they are so in need.
Border separating Mexico and the United States. These soldiers will be specifically designated to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants into our country. We further agreed to immediately pause the anticipated tariffs for 1 month period, during which we will have negotiations headed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent, and Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, and high-level representatives of Mexico. I look forward to participating in those negotiations with President Sheinbaum as we attempt to achieve a deal between our two countries. We also continue to have this live picture out of Mexico as President Sheinbaum continues to address a crowd there, including the press. She was answering some questions regarding that phone call that she had with President Trump early this morning around 8 in the morning local time. And I do want to just recap this breaking news for you all here, reading some reporting from the Associated Press in which they say Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum saying Monday that after a conversation with U.S. President Donald Trump that the planned tariffs are on hold for 1 month. A statement that has been confirmed by the White House. The Mexican president added that the two countries would continue talks on security and trade, and that the, quote, tariffs are put on pause for a month from now. Now, the pause added to the drama as President Trump's tariffs against Canada and China are still slated to go into effect on Tuesday. That's tomorrow. Uncertainty remains about the durability of any deals and whether the tariffs are going to bring on a broader trade war, as President Trump has promised more import taxes to come. The president posting on social media that he spoke Monday with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and would be speaking to him again at 3 p.m. Both Canada and Mexico had plans to levy their own tariffs in response to U.S. actions, but Mexico is holding off for the moment. The president, that's Trump, using his Monday social media post to repeat his complaints that Canada has been uncooperative despite decades of friendship and partnerships that range from World War II to the response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the United States. So while we are following this development between the U.S. and Mexico, it still remains to be seen what's going to happen going forward with these tariffs between the U.S., Canada, and China. We're stepping away for a brief commercial break here at Live Now from Fox.
So I guess it is good for Mexico to have this 1 month of period to see how things are going to develop with China and Canada and see if this is good or bad. I do love the reaction in the comments of the community on this video. Phew, I was stockpiling avocados and beer. It was never about the money, it was about sending a message. Donald Trump. There are some TikToks when this news just came out and people were reacting to it, so let's go and check it out.
Am I going to impose tariffs on the European Union? Do you want the truthful answer, or should I give you a political answer? Absolutely. Wow. Absolutely. The European Union has treated us so terribly.
Here's how Trump's new tariffs are going to affect Canada and the United States.
Germany.
In summary, a tariff is just a tax on imported goods into the country. In general, this tax is paid by the importer when those goods cross the border. If you have a Canadian good that generally cost an American importer $1 and Trump puts a 25% tariff on it, that importer is now going to pay a total of $1.25 and the US government is going to get that 25 cents. So if you're an importer that used to buy from Canada because it was cheaper than buying the US version, now the Canadian one is more expensive than the US. And that means that all of the orders right here are now going to go to the U.S. companies instead of Canadian companies, or Canadian companies are going to move to manufacture.
Which, if you think about it, it's good for the US, the government itself, but what does that mean for the consumers, the people who will buy those products?
Factor in the United States. Now, the problem with this is that the end customer is now going to end up paying more for the exact same good. And this is called inflation, which is the exact thing the Fed has been fighting against since the 8% inflation rates of 2022.
So the UK is way out of line, and we'll see the UK, but European Union is really out of line. UK is out of line, but I'm sure I think that one can be worked out. Well, Prime Minister Starmer has been very nice. We've had a couple of meetings. We've had numerous phone calls. We're getting along very well. And we'll see whether or not we can balance out our budget. With the European Union, it's $350 billion deficit. So obviously something's going to take place there.
And we have breaking news coming out of Mexico. The president, Claudia Sheinbaum, is speaking right now, and she says the Trump administration has agreed to pause tariffs against their exports for a month from today. She says she had a good conversation with Donald Trump and reached several agreements, including reinforcing their border with 10,000 National Guard members to prevent
Which they have,
trafficking.
I mean, in my opinion, they should have done that way earlier. If they could have done that and put guards on the borders earlier, why did they not do it? They had to go through this. This was like all planned, I feel like. That's like the pressure for them to do it.
Claudia Sheinbaum just did something to Donald Trump that no world leader has ever done in Trump's entire tenure as president, and that is get in front of him before he can spew his BS. Now today, Claudia Sheinbaum and Donald Trump met, and they put a pause to the tariffs. That's the good news. But there was more negotiations, and usually Donald Trump will come out and spin this as some amazing victory that he accomplished.
Yeah, of
but
course he
instead,
will.
Claudia Sheinbaum got in front of that and came out and said this, that we had a great discussion today with President Trump, and we agreed on 4 things. 1, Mexico will reinforce the border to prevent the illicit substances into the United States. The United States is going to work to prevent the weapons going into Mexico. And both teams will continue to talk on security and trade, and that tariffs will be paused for a month. By the way, that's called diplomacy. That's how adults do it.
Yeah.
She absolutely cut Donald Trump's legs off from under him. Normally he wants to come out and spike the football, but she's having none of that. And now the bad news. Mexico has 1 month to start working on other trade partners, hurting the U.S. in the long term.
I'll try summarizing this as
Ooh,
quickly
that is also very true. Germany will get a big supply of avocados. Finally, the avocados are going to actually taste good in Germany. They are awful.
possible, but this is what we need.
1 month to start working on other trade partners, hurting the U.S. in the long term.
I'll try summarizing this as quickly as possible, but this is what we need to do in response to Trump's tariffs. 1, our GDP is going to decline by about 2 to 3% at minimum, which means there's going to be a lot of people who are unemployed. We currently have 50,000 students, international ones, that came to our country saying that they were coming here to study that didn't show up for their first day of school. They're in our economy. They're draining our resources, and they need to be deported. And I know you don't want to hear that word, and people feel uncomfortable with that word, but we do need mass deportations of people that should not be in this country. If you have too many people in the country and very little jobs, those jobs need to go to Canadian citizens, period. That it should be an unquestionable given. Canadians must put Canadians first. Secondly, we have a lot of Canadian companies that are actually owned by American entities. There's something called a withholding tax. When those foreign owners go to take out a dividend from the Canadian corporations, the Canadian companies that they own, they need to be hit with a higher withholding tax fee. I would literally double it. That prevents the money from leaving Canada and the profits staying within our country and not making its way into...
Like, it is terrible when the country itself provides you with a salary and gives you the money, and then you take that money and spend it in a different country. Then that other country is actually benefiting from it, not Canada itself. So I do understand his point here.
To the U.S. ownership. I don't know if you knew this, but there are tariffs and trade restrictions within our own provinces. All restrictions that exist within provinces, they need to be removed completely. There needs to be free trade across all provinces across Canada. And yes, there are tariffs and there are restrictions and there are exemptions to do trade within provinces, which is insane. The carbon tax needs to be eliminated immediately. We cannot be thinking, we literally cannot afford to think about climate change when we represent less than 1% of all total carbon emissions globally. But yet it is hurting us, hurting Canadian citizens, especially when the carbon tax on a natural gas heating bill is triple the price of the actual usage. And I know that because I've seen it myself. Mine, I think, comes in at close to double. We have to make close to $250 billion of investment in liquefied natural gas and diversify ourselves against the US. Right now, we have one pipeline basically that goes into one country and one country only, and that's to the US. When you remove the oil and gas that is going to the US, we are actually at a trade deficit. The US has a surplus. They sell more to us than we sell to them when you take away the oil that they need. And they're trying to say that, there's this unfair balance of trade. There is an unfair balance. They're getting that oil at such a cheap price because we can't sell it to anyone else because we only made one pipeline. We did not give it to Europe. We did not give it to Japan when they both asked for us. Trudeau said there is no, and I repeat, he said there's no business case for it. This is the thing that Donald Trump warned Germany about. They said, you're in deep trouble because you have a sole reliance on Russia gas.
Oh my God, that is so true. And then the Ukraine war happened and everything went downhill here in Germany, you guys, because of that. So learn from our mistakes.
We not take that advice ourselves and diversify ourselves from the US and make that liquefied natural gas pipeline both to Europe and both to Asia. If Canada and the Canadian government held a 30 to 40% stake, none of this is a problem at all. We can cut taxes on top of it, and we can subsidize every single one of those industries that would be affected by this. And it wouldn't even make a dent in the taxpayer pocket. We wouldn't even have to print out any more money. We have the third largest oil and gas reserves in the world, only behind Saudi Arabia and behind Venezuela. And do you think Donald Trump would do something like this to Saudi Arabia? That is the strongest hand that we have. We have the ability to make trillions upon trillions of dollars with our reserves, and we're holding ourselves back. And there's a bigger list of this, but these are the immediate things that can be done to help us out in the long run, because the short term, it's gonna get real ugly. And that's where the 4 million temporary people who are in this country, when mass unemployment happens, they need to go.
The most insane.
Guys, do you think that Trump is actually making more enemies right now by doing stuff like that? Because he is putting this pressure on other countries around the world to change tactics and then change suppliers or change people they work with and countries they work with. And that means that less allies for America at the end. I don't know. Let me know what you think.
Trade war has.
When mass unemployment happens, they need to go.
The most insane trade war has officially begun because Canada, Mexico, and China are pissed and have now all announced their own plans on how to retaliate against Trump's tariffs. I mean, even at last night's NHL hockey game, you had Canadians booing the US national anthem. So what the hell is going on? Well, you see, yesterday, Trump's promised 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico and 10% on China officially kicked in. And what that means is that any goods sent from these countries to the United States, well, they'll now cost companies 25% more, or 10% in China's case. So for example, if a Canadian business sent a car to the US that cost $50,000, today, US companies will pay a $12,500 tariff at the border. But then, and here's the annoying part, they'll pass that cost down to you, the US customer. So the price of your once $50,000 car is now actually $62,500.
Yeah.
But this doesn't.
At the end of the day, you guys are the one that are getting screwed. The consumers, the one that will have to buy these products, it's gonna cost you more. Like, this is not good for America.
Makes sense. Why would Trump purposefully make things more expensive for Americans? Well, two main reasons. The first is more of a longer-term, unguaranteed benefit, but it would be to change consumer habits to buy more American-made products and incentivize more international companies to manufacture in the US.
Companies that him and his friends own? Interesting. Well, at the end of the day, guys, you chose a president who is also a huge businessman, and he knows business. And yeah, it's not just political, it's also business. And it's happening.
In theory, that means a stronger US economy, more stable jobs, and less dependence on foreign countries. And the second reason for imposing these tariffs would be to use them as a tool to pressure Canada, Mexico, and China into doing what Trump wants. I mean, some of these things that he's publicly mentioned include renegotiating trade deals, stopping illegal immigration and the flow of fentanyl, and then there's also Canada becoming a state of America, but that's a bit more far-fetched. But here's where things get interesting, because instead of just doing...
Bro, Americans, please tell me, do you really think Canadians are gonna agree to do something like that? Never. What are you talking about? Like, no.
What Trump wants, Canada have clapped back with a 25% tariff of their own, and Mexico said they're doing the same, but haven't announced the percentage yet. China reacted in a little bit of a different way by preparing to file a lawsuit with the World Trade Organization. So why is Trump not backing down? Well,
I'm interested about
just
the
listen to this. In 2023, Canada sent 76% of all of their exports to the United States. That accounts for roughly 19% of their entire GDP. In 2024, Mexico sent 78% of all of their exports to the United States. That makes up 37% of their entire GDP. But for America, their exports to both countries combined only make up roughly 2.7% of their entire GDP.
Nobody wants American products. Nah, jokes. I don't mean it. I just think it's cheaper for them to use their own products, I guess. Or Mexico is a poorer country, so I really don't know.
So, simply put, even if they do retaliate, getting into a tariff war with the United States would hit Canada and Mexico much harder. Trump, he knows this, and he's using it. It doesn't make it any less controversial, and it does still mean that people in all three countries will see a price increase. But it seems like, for Trump at least, that's just the cost of America winning.
Is America really winning? I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, you're the one who will have to pay more, or you will have to pay American products even if they were not as good just because they are cheaper. I don't know. You let me know in the comments down below what you think about this. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe for more, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye!